Aloha, my friend. Welcome back to Tiki Talkin' Coffee. I'm your host, RG Williams, founder of RG Hawaiian Coffee. Today's episode is kind of fun. It's about a journey so many dream about of taking, right? The journey of taking something that you love, something you start, that kind of stuff, and bringing it to life. For me, it was something that started on the kitchen table and bringing it to the world, packaged and ready to be on retail shelves and so forth. But it's just not simply about something that I'm bringing to the table or start with the table. And it's not just a business lesson. This is a story of, kind of creativity, commitment, steadfastness, courage, whatever you want to do it, whatever you want to call it. So do me a favor, grab your mug, man, and let's talk story. So where do I talk about this passion, right? Every great product starts with passion. Every great, it's very interesting, and I've shared this in other episodes, but for me, it was a simple love of coffee. And it is very interesting because the way I was raised is we didn't always have coffee in the house. My mom would drink instant coffee, but we wouldn't really brew it or anything along those lines, right? My brother and I, my middle brother, him and I would have someone and we'd go camping because we loved the smell of it out there. But more and more was around the love of as I got going older and older and on the road and more in my career, it became, I don't know, it was a comfort. It was a ritual. It was just something. So maybe just simple. The love of coffee, the love of the ritual, the scent, the aroma, even some of the sense of connection that it brought to me. And not necessarily, a lot of people have it from home I know my neighbors, I would go over to the Perry's, I think it was Perry's, and I'd go over there and they would always be brewing coffee and have it. And there was just a lot of fun memories over there. But I can't really say that, it was childhood memories because it was only camping memories that we had. But as I got going up, I remember I was sophomore in high school and I'd started playing in a band, a bass player, great friends, Danny and Jeff and Craig. And we were just young kids. Craig had, he had done, that doesn't even make it good English. He had set his schooling up correctly. In other words, he had knocked out all of his credits needed, and when he got to his senior year, he only had like a half a day, and then he would take off, and during the winters here in Utah, he would take off, finish his few classes, then he'd take off and ski for a few hours in the wintertime, and then back down, and he worked at an Italian restaurant, and he was in the pizza business, and that kind of stuff. And I remember when I'd go out with him, we'd be hanging. He was always a year old. He was a year older than myself. But as we'd always hang out together and stuff, he drank coffee and kind of introduced me to it. And then one of the jobs I had at that time frame also was a busboy. And I worked for a breakfast, well, I guess it wasn't even a breakfast. It was called JB's Big Boy. And I think they originated Bob's Big Boy out of California. I could be wrong on that. Anyway, there was a restaurant here in Salt Lake. My middle brother, Brad, the one we did camping with that I keep referring to here, he was the night manager and then became early morning manager, general manager for it and stuff. And so helped get me the job on there. And of course, I'm a young kid, just trying to figure out which end is up and who's doing what and that kind of stuff. But what happened for me is I started drinking coffee there, right? It was one of those, my brother drank it, so I was drinking it. And so I think some of that was where the connection came back, right? Where the connection came back. And I've always enjoyed coffee. So it's always been a passion of mine, but the thing is that I have to look at is the passion alone isn't enough, right? It's what I've come to a real cool statement is it's not necessarily the passion alone isn't enough, but it's the spark, but that's not the fire, right? So maybe you're out there and your passion is a recipe, a craft, a skill you've fine-tuned, you've honed. Maybe it's something family and friends have always asked you for, right? It's something along this line. Here's the first side. If you're thinking about what the passion might be, right, is if people light up when you share it, then that might be what you're onto, right? That might be the thing that you need to move in the direction of. If it's good, because I've always, people always talk to me and they say, you need to pursue your passion. And when you pursue your passion, then figure out how to generate capital with it, right? And increase your income off of that. And some people just say, hey, my passion is quilting. I mean, that was a great passion of my mom. She made some of the most knitting, quilting, needlepoint, little things along those lines. It was just something of passion for her. My middle brother, again, he was a restaurateur. He just simply loved food. And so that was his passion, right? And so I've known people that have created amazing incomes off of things that they're passionate about. So think about this. The first sign, again, is if people light up when you share what you're passionate about. That might be the direction you need to go. But you got to move it from your desk, from the kitchen table, and you've got to get it out there, right? You got to get it on the shelf. You got to get it. It's not just say, hey, I've got some experience, right? I've got a ton of experience in real estate, but that might not be where my passion is, right? So here's three things I'd like to ask you to think about as you're developing out your passion. Is there a real demand for it? Can you replicate it consistently? And do you have a story that people can connect with? So three things again. Is there a real demand? Can you replicate it with consistency or replicate it consistently? And do you have a story that people connect with? Because the truth is people don't just buy products. They buy the story behind them. Does that make sense? Let me repeat that. People don't just buy products. They buy the story behind them. So for me, it was very interesting, as all of this coffee came together. And some of you that don't know the story, go back to the first few episodes, podcast episodes, and listen to those, right? It came together over multiple years and so forth. But when we first started this, it was April 2024, right? And just the little things of, when I started looking at it, because let me back it up, because even before 2024, it was working with a good friend of mine, Thiago, from Brazil, and how we were going to bring it all from Brazil into the United States, how it had to be we had to do it in containers, and then how to bring it in to do the roasting and how to, all of that kind of stuff. So, I didn't have anything. I came from the real estate industry, right, where I taught real estate, invested in real estate, helped others with their real estate. And so I didn't have any fancy machines. I didn't have a networking system. I didn't have any of that kind of stuff. But what I did have, and I always have had, is, what do you want to call it? I call myself a hustler. I call myself a tinker, right? I will create. I tinker with things and I get it done. And so it was the hustle, right? The faith in myself, the drive of something. So I kept telling myself I wanted something along the lines, I call them consumables. I wanted something that was, full over and over and over and over. Because I believe that with repeats, you can create a massive system. And a massive system that creates massive opportunity income. But the things I had to deal with on it, right, is I didn't have a logo. I didn't have any bags. I didn't bag design. I didn't have any of that. And I was very, very, very fortunate that my amazing friend, partner, Justin, over in Oahu, ran into, I can't say fortunate, it was the alignment of, and we ran into a great group, right? We ran into this great group that already had bag design, that already had label production, that already had a great mix, roast, all those kind of stuff that we just simply were able to tap into. So the first part of this thing that we had to look at was come up with a name, come up with a logo. Again, go back to a couple of the first early episodes of our podcast here, Tiki Talk. Oh my gosh, I can't even think today. Tiki Talk and Coffee, and go back and listen to some of the stuff that we put together. And so we got a great logo. My 17-year-old daughter designed it out. I then jumped out to an entrepreneur in Pakistan who, finalized it, put it in the production mode, the JPEGs and the different formats needed, right? And excuse me as I enjoy my coffee as we go on this. We got it all put together, got the logo design, sent the logo over. They then put it into labels. We went a very, very generic way in the very beginning. We picked a colored bag, which happened to be a very cool purple, right? And it was almost a translucent, metallic kind of purple, right? So it was just really cool. And then the original label was a pink black background, which we then turned it into a white background with purple coloring, letter coloring. And then what we would do is put the flavor label, our island blend, our macadamia nut, or that. It was a separate label that went on. And so we had the bag, then our label on it, and then a little tiny flavor label. Then the next step is we needed a little bit of a story. So we created a story, new labels, and put that on the backside. We then launched, right? And it was very interesting because, and I'll bring something up here towards the end. My wife made a comment just the other day about it, but we started talking. We started selling it to people. We started showing it, just talking about it. And it was interesting because Justin said, man, we ought to do it as, some play on your name, RG, because people are always asking, what's RG doing? And, because I've been in industries for 20, 28, 30 years. And people was like, oh my gosh, what's he's into now? And just because of the name, they'll start buying. And that absolutely is the case, that people, just because they try it. The thing that was really cool, and these to me are the golden days, right, is because this is where we started discovering things, right? It's where we found our voice, found the flavor, found the foundation, found the things, right? And so the lesson is embracing these small beginnings, because this really teaches you to be resourcefulness and resilience. And those are the things that you need all along the way. It is so important that you have. So we took this, and then we came in to realizing that not only were we designing something that was telling a story, right? We had to discover professionalism in it. So this is where our turning point came, right? The turning point came that if we were going to reach people beyond that circle, okay, then the packaging, like the branding, right? We needed to package. Oh my gosh, let me think this through again. We needed to brand everything, and so that our packaging echoed that, so that it didn't look like a hobby. Because one of the feedback we got, right, and I've always lived by this, launch, learn, pivot, or adjust, right? Launch, learn, adjust, launch, learn, adjust. And some of the feedback we were getting, because it was, hey, this is a really pretty bag. Your bag is pretty. Hey, your bag is pretty, right? That was the feedback, not the coffee. The bag is pretty. Then we take a second survey and stuff. Oh yeah, some of the most amazing coffee. And now we're at that level where everybody's like, this is the most amazing coffee they've ever tasted, because we've got a really great formula. Our roast is amazing. But what we discovered is we were also getting some of the professional companies out there that, the oh my gosh, the grocery stores and all of that, to get it on the shelf. They were looking at it going, are you bagging this? Is this out of your garage, right? Because it was a bag, a put on label, and the flavor on it, and everything was the same. So we'd have a purple bag, the same label, and then just a name that said macadamia nut, or a name that said banana mac or island blend, and that kind of stuff. And what we discovered was we were not professional in our packaging. So we decided that the packaging needed to become a silent salesperson, if you will, right? The materials and everything had to echo, right? Because the product on the inside, we mastered, right? And what we then took is we needed to have the outside be as good as the inside, or they're not going to get to the inside. So what we had to look at was we pulled everything back. We totally revamped our logo image, totally have changed the branding, pulled everything together. Now we have individual colors. So like our Island Blend is a black background. Our Macadamia Nut is a brown background. Our Vanilla Mac is a blue background. Our Banana Creme Brulee is a yellow background, right? And so it was set up because what my partner Justin said was, hey, it's easy to identify the flavors by a color, right? Think about the Lay's potato chip or the packaging of Doritos and so forth, right? You've got your, what is it, salt and vinegar and the barbecue and so forth. They're all in different colored bags, right? Each individual bag. And so if you're hollering at your partner down the road and say, hey, what flavor am I getting? Oh, just the blue bag. So you can just go by color, right? And so what we're looking at is originally our packaging wasn't functional. It was emotional, right? And so we had to change everything so that the look and the feel and the weight of the bag and everything had to communicate our whole message. And our whole message is what? Aloha, right? Luxury, lifestyle, premium coffee, all of that. So we had to have that. We changed from a purple bag to a white bag for our coffee. We're a black bag for our pancake mix. We changed all of our logos. We went more of an island feel with the design. Same logo, right? Or same RG, all that kind of stuff. But we added in tribal look and everything else. And so one of the things to remember is that packaging is often your first impression. And that's where you have to make it count, right? Now we're in this really interesting position because now we've got to make the big leap. Now we've got to make the big leap in getting it onto shelves, right? And I'm going to tell you that some of the things we faced, okay, and are facing. Because while it sounds really glamorous, there's some massive truth behind this, right? And that truth is, it's a grind. And not just, play on words of grind with coffee, but it's a grind. Like anything else of getting your book on the shelf at Amazon or Barnes & Noble as it used to be, right? The whole thing about when you're talking to a retail store, the gatekeepers, right? That's the first thing. The gatekeepers are going to want proof that your product sells. So you're going to need to put, like we had to put together a POS sheet, a point of sale. We had to have all of that it tells what we are, who we are, right? Then we had to look at the pricing pressures, right? And how it is with slim margins. We have massive roasting happening over on the islands, but to get the island from the island over to mainland, right? We had to add all of the shipping in there. We had to play with things differently. We're still dealing with that. Which direction do we go? How are our margins going to be? Where are our profit margins? This is just business, right? And so we had to price all of that out. Then we start working with restaurants. And we've got a new restaurant we're going to be working with. Those who live in Utah, you want to be looking for Lake Break at North Shore. A great restaurant coming on, seafood-based type stuff with a very high-end, fun weekend brunch that'll be featuring RG Hawaiian Coffee and pancake mix on the weekends, right? But that's a slim margin because now we're dealing with restaurants, okay? And then we had to deal with barcodes, right? From our internal warehouse barcodes, right? All of that kind of stuff into an inventory code to the shipping and shelf barcodes and then shelf life, right? All of that kind of stuff. It's a grind, and the whole thing that you're putting together, right, is now bringing the vision, the passion to life, right? Once you see your product on the shelf, your book being sold for the first time, your coffee bags on the shelf for the first time. It really is surreal that you step back and you realize that, man, this was once lived on the kitchen table. It's now alive in the world, right? We're in discussion that next year in 2026, first half of 2026, we're going to be in Tokyo, Okinawa, and Osaka, right? We're going to be first we're going to hit Tokyo and Osaka, so we're in Japan, and then we're going to hit Okinawa, and then we're going to be pushing all over in the other areas of the Pacific Rim, right? And the whole thing is, how are you dealing with building your brand? How are you getting it out there? How, if you're doing a training seminar company and that kind of stuff, how are you getting it out to, all the different social media marketing and so forth? And the key in this is absolute relationships, right? Building relationships with buyers, distributors, shop owners, social media influencers, on and on and on. Because really, when you got to think about it, they're not just contacts. They are absolute partners in your dream, your dream. And with this, we always say you have to treat them like ohana, like your family. You have to treat them like ohana, right? And so let me share some of the things some of the biggest lessons, I guess. Let's go take this way, right? Some of the biggest lessons, or maybe three, let's narrow it down. Narrow lessons to these three lessons that I've learned in taking this coffee from passion table to shelf. And that is to fall in love with the process. Fall in love with the process, not just the product, right? The late night labeling, the late night building out the logos, the late night getting your merchandise put together. Oh, and by the way, shameless plug here. We've got a new clothing line coming down the pipeline, so watch for it. It'll be titled Aloha Brew Outfitters. It's going to be really fun. You'll like it. Hats, gloves, hoodies, t-shirts, scarves, the koozies around, tumblers, on and on and on. We're even coming down the line where we were talking last night about having our own coffee makers and all kinds of stuff, hammocks and outdoor grills and all, just some fun brainstorming last night. Okay. But all of that, thinking about all of that, that is as much part of the dream as the shelf placement, as the first sell, as the marketing, right? And then you have to protect your story. You have to protect your story, because the worst thing you could ever do is to allow the pressure of scaling strip away of what makes your brand unique, right? What makes you unique? What sets you aside? You've got to think, and this is the third one, you've got to think massive. You got to think in empire. You got to think worldwide, okay? And then you have to act local. Start small, build your community, scale it step by step, right? Because what you got to remember is that empires aren't built in a single leap. They're built through hundreds of faithful step by step, right? That's the whole thing you got to look at, is it's one step, just pull the trigger one time, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one. And I share this in all of my training seminars, is that people get involved with this in the brand new because of the overwhelming fear of things. Right, they get into the ready aim. That wasn't your needle stuck, right? That is, they get into the ready aim position and they never make it past the aim into fire. So it's never ready aim fire. They get into ready aim and they get stuck there. The whole thing is fire. Then you have to adjust. So you launch, learn, adjust, launch, learn, pivot. We launched. We had everything. I even wrapped one of my trucks, right? Wrapped it in bright purple and so forth, so it was a moving billboard. Well, that color scheme doesn't even match our branding anymore, right? But I was willing to do that and set it up in step by step. And so, okay, great. That's the way this has got to play, right? You've got to be willing to take the step, to take the next step, to say, hey, I'm building a coffee empire. Hey, I'm building a real estate empire. Hey, I'm building an online training. Hey, I'm building an online e-commerce store. Hey, I'm doing this. I am doing this, right? You got to take the steps on that. So let me give you this absolute closing challenge, if you will. Okay? If you've got a passion, something that you've been keeping at your kitchen table, take one step this week and bring it closer to the shelf. Maybe it's designing the label. Maybe it's pricing out your packaging. Maybe it's sharing your story online that you're starting to, you're just, oh, okay, great. Right? My daughter, my oldest, She's got a really cool new e-commerce store coming on that is going to move into some brick and mortar, and it's called Ink and Shadows. It's books, and yes, my coffee will be sold there. Okay, but here's what you got to do, man. You got to do step by step. Don't wait for it to be perfect. Start where you are with what you have. That's how every empire begins, guys. That's how everything begins, is you have to look at it, take the little steps. So something that you've been thinking about doing, do it. Take one step this week to bring it closer to coming together, right? Again, don't wait for it to be perfect. Start where you are with what you have, right? Build it out. Build it out. Guys, again, man, I tell you what, mahalo for joining me today on Tiki Talk and Coffee. I am so excited about where I'm going with this, and I hope that you'll enjoy. If you're inspired by it, share it with other dreamers. If you want to taste the spirit of what we've built from the kitchen table to the retail shelf, join us or visit us at RGHawaiianCoffee.com. Get some of our merchandise. And just know that every time you purchase right now, between now and the end of the year in 2025, every purchase gets you a ticket or an entry into a free Hawaiian vacation that we're giving away. Go to RGHawaiianCoffee.com. If you go to RGHawaiianCoffee.com and look up the free vacation or the Hawaiian vacation contest, go through all of that. Buy something, buy some coffee, buy some pancake mix, get entry into that free drawing for the free vacation. Join our subscription letter. Get in. We've got some new things coming down with 5 Hawaiian rituals, different things that you can do, and new books coming out that I'm just finishing writing, and all of that kind of stuff that just keeps it all moving forward. And until next time, guys, sip slowly, dream big, build with aloha, and ahui hui until we meet again.